more and more data is going to win wars. Well, guess what? If that data gets compromised, you're better off with no data than compromised data. As such, cybersecurity remains a very important aspect of any strategy that wants to cover that space. And we tend to include it because we think it's important to protect the data, especially in such critical applications.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Axel Belorde. He is Head of Business Development for TMX VettaFi for EMEA and Asia. Axel, very good to speak with you. Defense is evolving quickly. Which technologies do you think will have the biggest impact over the next 5 years?
Well, clearly, autonomous systems. And there are various facets to automation, as you know. One of them is, the physical automation, aka robotics, unmanned boats, unmanned, aerial vehicles, drones, and they will be more useful than ever on the battlefield. They will define who is going to win in the future and shape the battlefield. And on the other side, you've got the digital side of automation, which is basically operational AI, and how you can integrate multiple data sources from all your traditional assets, but also the more modern and autonomous systems into a common operating picture to take better decisions, not for the beauty of the algorithm, not for the beauty of how many parameters and algorithms you're going to build, but what decisions will shape the battlefield, what decisions will enable the soldiers to take a better decision to save his lives, to save his team, or to win simply. And then basically, the third aspect is anti-autonomous systems, a defense solution. So anti-drones is probably the most popular, but there will be a need for that, and not just on the battlefield, also to help our police forces in other types of more civilian type security operations.
Axel, drones are becoming more capable and more autonomous. How's that changing the way investors think about the defense sector?
Well, it's changing a lot because most of them, especially the small to medium ones, cost less. So if you think about the concept of attrition or the concept of building asymmetric advantage, whether it's actually in the commercial sector, government sector, security sector, the drones are a formidable tool to deliver outsized impact. They can destroy very heavy equipment. They can attack your critical energy infrastructure. And unless you're able to defend yourself or have these offensive capabilities yourself, you probably won't have the advantage in the future. And then the other aspect, which is important, which is also related to cost, is the concept of supply chain resilience. Well, guess what? When you build a drone, you can use more plastic polymers, you can use less heavy alloys that require a lot of metal at high temperature, which is what you need for other type of equipment like an aircraft, a boat, or a tank. And you also use less critical minerals, or so-called rare earths. There are some aspects of the drone that still require it, like the magnets for the motors, etc. But it's much less in terms of quantity compared to other equipment. So if you think about depending where you stand in geopolitical spectrum, if you're in Europe, you don't have much of those rare earths. And you're making your supply chain more resilient by building those new capabilities. So it's definitely at the top of the agenda, I hope, of our politicians, not just for the army, but also for the police forces. We need a lot of help and goodwill from the people today.
Software is playing a much bigger role in defense. Where are you seeing the biggest opportunities in areas like AI, automation, and battlefield management?
Well, the first thing to say is, you don't just need drones. You also can automate with semi-automate aircraft. So we are a big believer here at VettaFi that when you deploy automation, you're best doing it by supplementing the human expert. And there's no better example than an aircraft, which thanks to AI, machine vision, and the new types of processing and models that have been rolled out can help supplement the decision of the pilot. You can also fully automate aircrafts, but this complement between AI and the expert is what we like best. Another example is what you call battlefield management software. You can't imagine the number of data sources, data formats you've got when you're on the battlefield, especially when you got to work in the context of an alliance with different standards, different countries, different doctrines. So data integration remains a key step, and we're very bullish on any software that can integrate data, structure it semantically, and then on top of that, enable to roll out a number of applications, some of them AI powered, some of them task specific AI agents like better logistics, like better targeting, And that end-to-end approach is usually what works better because it's often safer and it powers better decisions. It's focused on the outcome. It's not focused on building little silos. It's really focused on the result. And there's no better way than defense and no better field than defense or security in general to be focused on outcomes. Just like in the commercial sector, you want to be focused on, is this driving my decisions? Is this driving my P&L? Or is it just algorithmic beauty? So we're very bullish on that sector.
I mean, as you mentioned, many of these technologies also have civilian uses. How much does that dual use potential strengthen the investment case?
Well, that's a great question. It leads to basically target market expansion. In some of the strategies we've been rolling out, we don't just buy the government and the civilian usage of drones, for example. Drones have got a lot of applications in supply chain management, whether it's to resupply the forces, whether it's to deliver a package at your doorstep, whether it's in entertainment when you want to take your video on your holiday or just go to a spectacle, you've got a light show that's going on. Today, those autonomous systems are smaller, they're nimble, they're safer. There's been a lot of progress in terms of the ability of new types of models to train the systems and to make them readily available day one on the battlefield without the need for long iteration cycles around training. And so there's multiple applications. Think about predictive maintenance when you want to make sure that gas tank or that facility like an FPSO is not destroyed. You want to focus your maintenance. You can save millions thanks to the use of drones. It's the same example, a company called Gecko Robotics, still private. Well, they can be used to maintain the Navy boats, but they can also be used to maintain any critical infrastructure. And we see here the combination of drones and other type of autonomous systems to deliver better outcomes. So overall, the investment case covers both government, military, security. I mentioned the police forces, as well as civilian use cases.
For investors looking at defense-themed ETFs, what should they focus on beyond the traditional aerospace and defense names?
Well, the first trend we're seeing is a need for modernization. And for many, many years, and that's true pretty much across the globe, but definitely in Europe, not much has been allocated to the army. I mean, a lot of the money was spent on paying the troops and they're not getting paid much, right? So no equipment was getting bought. Capital markets were building non-existent for those kind of companies. It's just not a popular investment theme. Today, there are new targets, there are new objectives. And for them to come to fruition, the army has no choice but to invest in modern systems. So what we see as a differentiator of any investment strategy that wants to give exposure to that sector is the ability to include other parts of the data value chain. Remember, you've got different standards, you've got different troops, they need to integrate data. More and more data is going to win wars. Well, guess what? If that data gets compromised, you're better off with no data than compromised data. As such, cybersecurity remains a very important aspect of any strategy that wants to cover that space. And we tend to include it because we think it's important to protect the data, especially in such critical applications. And then the second aspect that I referred to already is the fact that this technology will need to be made available to the police forces. It doesn't take a long time to run a couple blocks around where you live, find some kind of extremist force that I would call civilian, that gets access to this kind of autonomous technology, adds an explosive on it. So anything to do with protecting core civilian infrastructure, protecting the public, protecting airports, and giving the police forces better anti-drone technology is something that's going to be a key trend we're going to be seeing grow in the next couple of years.
Well, Axel, thank you very much for your insights. It's been great speaking with you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Axel Belorde, TMX VettaFi, Head of Business Development for EMEA and Asia.